Hello, and welcome back to The Den. I am MagicBro Nick, and today I will be reviewing my monocolored deck, Horobi, Death's Wail. Oh! Now, this is a reminder that a lot of people's deck lists will change from person to person. A lot of times it's based on your experience level, how you've seen cards interact, how much money you have, the budget of your deck, what you're willing to spend, and the play group. The people that you're playing with all the time, they will drastically influence what kind of cards will go into your deck. Today I will be going over Horobi Death's Wail. It is a 4-drop, 2 black, 2 generic mana, a 4/4 flying, with the ability, whenever a creature becomes the target of a spell or ability, destroy that creature. Effects will start mingling different than people anticipate. Now, I find that I have a hard time winning very quickly with Hirobi. It naturally wants to draw out the game. So I would suggest adding cards in the deck that can kill your opponent faster. Otherwise, you'll just be that guy who's slowing the game down and nobody wants to play against the Hirobi deck. Next, we have Cauldron of Souls. One big combo card with Horobi. With this card, you can target any number of creatures, so turning Horobi into a lethal weapon that can field wipe your opponent's creatures. With the added benefit that if Horobi is not on the board, you can give your creatures persist, allowing them to fight longer in battle. But you are going to want ways to search out Cauldron, because it is such a strong effect. Thankfully, Black has plenty of ways to do that. Now I go with Diabolic Tutor, because it is a budget-friendly card. And I also use Brain Spoil, because it has Transmute to search for any 5-drop card. And if I draw Brain Spoil after Cauldron, I can destroy a creature that isn't enchanted. But searching for Cauldron isn't always going to be enough, because once Cauldron hits the board, nobody is going to want to have it around, messing up all their fun. So, you may need Retrieval in the deck. I use Beacon of Unrest, because it can bring back Cauldron, any artifact, or any creature from the grave, while going back into my deck to be used later. So that is all for the Cauldron portion of the deck. There is another card that allows Horobi to act much like Cauldron, but to a weaker degree. That is Tetsimok Primal Death. For 1 black, you can reveal him and put a prey counter on any creature, making it so Horobi can destroy that creature. Then you also have the effect of him being a 6/6 Death Touch dinosaur. When he enters the battlefield, if they happen to have prey counters on them, he will kill them. Now, Horobi might not always be on the board. Horobi is unfortunately a double-edged sword. And even though it allows you to kill so many creatures by targeting them, if Horobi becomes targeted, it will kill Horobi. So you will need other means of destroying your opponent's creatures to keep the board in check. With Avatar of Woe, you can tap her to destroy any creature. Now, she is an 8 cost, but later in the game, if enough creatures are in grave, she'll drop down to a 2 cost. 6/5 with Fear. You can also use Viscera the Dreadful, a 5/5 flying, 6 mana. She can also tap to destroy a creature. Along those lines is also Royal Assassin, a 3-drop, 1/1. He can tap to destroy a tapped creature, so your opponent does need to be attacking, have attacked, activate ability, or some other way that their creature became tapped in order to kill them. And unfortunately, he does not have the same power as the other 2 creatures, so he is mostly used just for control. Murderous Rider. A 3-drop 2/3. It can go on an adventure, Swift End, to kill a creature or planeswalker. Later on, you can cast it for a 2/3 lifelink creature. Then we have Predator Flagship, a 5-drop artifact that can swat down any flying creature, and yet it can also give creatures flying. So for 7 mana, you can destroy any creature, while 5, you can destroy a flying creature. With the benefit, if Horobi is on the board, for 2 mana, we can destroy any creature. This deck does have the ability to retrieve creatures out of grave and give them a second chance on the battlefield. So cards like Shriekmaw and Ravenous Chupacabra can allow you to destroy a creature when they enter the battlefield. If they die and come back, destroy a creature again. These can go awfully well with the Cauldron's ability to give creatures persist if Horobi is not on the board. And then there's Obnixilis. For -3, he can destroy any creature, while he can also give you draw power. And if you're lucky enough to get the final -8 off, you can watch your opponent slowly drain of life. So that concludes the destroy effects if Horobi's not on the board. But now we need other ways of removing creatures when your opponent has indestructible. Indestructible is one of the big weaknesses of a Horobi's ability. So you need to find other means of getting rid of creatures off the board. You can always make your opponent sacrifice those creatures, since black has very much sacrificial theme around it. Archfiend of Depravity is a demon that will make your opponent sack down to only 2 measly creatures on board.
Where did they go?
A very powerful card against any wide-based deck. On top of this, he is a 5/4 flying demon who could potentially kill your opponent. Neferok's Overlord of Grixis, a 5/5 flying demon with Exalted, attacking alone grants the attacker +1/+1. But whenever he attacks alone, the defending opponent will have to sacrifice 1 creature, which is a great card to keep your opponent's boards in check after your opponent's boards have been wiped or early on in the game. So I'll go with exiling creatures. Sever the Bloodline allows us to exile any creature and all creatures with the same name as that creature. So quite often tokens will have the same name, mass wiping tokens off the board. This is a 4-drop with a flashback of 7, so you can snip that Bloodline one more time. Dark Imposter has the ability for 6 mana. You can exile any creature, while this Vampire Assassin grows stronger. And Dark Imposter will gain any activated ability that the exiled creature had, opening up potential power plays later in the game. King Makar, the Gold Cursed. This creature has inspired a unique ability. When you untap the creature, this triggers. He can exile any creature, a gold, on the battlefield as well. So once creatures have been removed off the board and people are slowly building back up, Makar can slowly exile those creatures and make sure you maintain control of the board. Now black tends to have a difficult time removing non-creatures off of the board. So I've included Scour from Existence, a 7-drop instant speed that will exile any permanent. Another good thing that black is incredible at are decay effects. Things that grant -1 counters, negative until end of turn, and you can use this negative toughness to kill your opponent's creatures who are indestructible. Black Sun Zenith is a very common control card. For 2 black and X, you can give all creatures X -1 counters, which makes it an incredible board wipe if you don't verse any massively grown creatures. At the very least, you can weaken your opponent's armies. Since this is mono black, we can take advantage of Mutilate, giving all creatures -1, -1 till end of turn for each swamp that we control, which should be a considerable amount since this is mono black. Midnight Banshee, a 6-drop 5/5, an interesting effect of Wither, but at the beginning of your upkeep, you'll slowly decay all non-black creatures. So in a mono black deck, that seems like a great deal. Demon of Dark Schemes. When he comes into play, he does a small decay to the board for -2/-2 to all creatures. While any creature dies while he's present, you get 1 energy. For black and 2, paying 4 energy, resurrects a creature from the grave and add it to your army tapped. Carnifex Demon, 6/6 flying, 6 mana. When he enters the battlefield, he does have 2 -1 counters, which seems like a really bad ability. But for 1 black, he can remove a counter and redistribute those counters to all other creatures. Strong effect to go with Black Sun Zenith if you couldn't quite finish the board off 1 turn. If he's on the board, he can follow up with more negative counters. Wretched Confluence. For 5 mana at instant speed, you can choose from the 3 modes more than once. So it does have draw power or resurrection back to hand, and you can target a creature to give -2/-2, which will allow it to get around indestructible, but also if Horobi's on the board, you can kill 3 creatures. Profane Command, 2 black and X. You get to choose 2 of these modes, offering versatility to the deck. You can drain your opponent's life, hopefully killing them, return a creature from the grave with X or less to the board, or target creature gets -X/-X, and if Horobi's on the board, X creatures can get fear, killing those creatures, or with no Horobi, hopefully giving you the game with a powerful fear effect. And you can use Drana, Caliastria Bloodchief, a 4/4 flying creature for 5 mana. Her ability is, for 2 black and X, you can give any creature -0/-X, hopefully killing them, while she gains X power to punch your opponent. The last card in the control category is Corrosive Mentor. Now this creature has no ability to kill right away, but all your black creatures become slowing decay forces that can just bring down even the mightiest of creatures over time. Zakthryd Gorgon. For 6 mana, a 3/6 Gorgon, Death Touch keyword, and for 3 mana, can petrify one of your opponent's creatures. So while not killing the creature, it can slow down your opponent's creatures and become useless for combat. Now that concludes the category on control, and we can move on to Retrieval. Now Palace Siege allows a reoccurring every turn 1 creature come back to my hand. So any of the powerful creatures we've seen so far, any of the enter battlefield effects you want to reuse, that's how I normally use this card. Since sometimes Hirobi will backfire and kill my own creatures, I can pull things back from grave. You can use dragons to keep up a little life sustain if that's more beneficial. Now every deck needs some draw power. So in mono black, usually if you pay a price in blood, you can draw more cards. So I run Night's Whisper, Sign in Blood, Read the Bones. They all allow you to draw 2 cards for 2 life, with Read the Bones allowing you to scry 2 more. Now that draw power was mostly one-time effects, but you may also want reoccurring abilities to draw to keep a healthy hand. So Underworld Connections allows you to draw instead of producing a mana with the land it's attached to, at the cost of 1 life as well. Indulgent Tormentor, a 5 mana 5/3 flying demon. At the beginning of your upkeep, draw a card unless an opponent sacks a creature or you pay 3 life. Bloodgift Demon, same thing. Every turn, a target player will get a free card at the cost of 1 life, the player of your choosing. The last draw power card is Harvester of Souls. 6 mana 5/5 Demon Death Touch. Whenever a non-token creature dies, you get to draw 1 card. Now with Horobi's ability to kill off creatures, this card should generate tons of value. Sometimes you'll find yourself versing opponents that can out-card advantage you in the hand like it's no one's business. Or you find yourself not being able to keep a decent hand size and you're down to 1 to 2 cards, and that can feel really bad. So Sandstone Oracle will allow you to draw back up to an opponent's hand size, whatever they may be at. Usually you can get a few pluses on this, +3 or so. If you get really lucky, +6. And it is a creature, so it does have that ability to come back from the grave and activate its ability again. Or with Cauldron, persist, and draw some more cards. And every deck needs a little bit of ramp to get ahead of your opponents. So we have the generic mana ramp, Soul Ring, one of the most famous ones. Charcoal Diamond for 2 mana, 1 black is produced. Worn Power Stone for 3 mana, 2 colorless mana will be produced, which is a fair amount of give back. You spend 3 to produce 2 for later turns. Now, not every mana production card needs to only produce mana. If you top deck one of these 3 previous cards later in the game, it may have no value to you. So I tend to put cards in my deck that will give me something later in the game and earlier on if I draw them. So Mind Stone for 2 mana will give you a colorless mana early on, and since we are monocolored, the type of mana isn't as relevant as just having an extra mana. But this card can also allow me to draw a card later on by sacrificing it off. Same goes for Oraska Relic. For 3 mana, it will give me 1 colorless mana. Later on, I can sacrifice it off and gain 3 life if I have City's Blessing. Hedron Archive, 4 mana, produces 2 colorless mana, and I can draw 2 cards later on when sacrificing it. Now those were mostly draw power, but with Unstable Obelisk, it can give mono black something that, again, it has a hard time doing. Similar to Scour from Existence, Unstable Obelisk will allow us to destroy a permanent, a card that we probably could not handle later on in the game. Twisted Ambition. While this card doesn't allow you to ramp, it will allow you to stay on land play curve. For 2 mana, you search your deck for a swamp and put it into your hand. Whereas if I draw it late game, it becomes a 5/3 creature for 1 black, regenerates to keep on fighting. So we have ways that we will produce resources, and we have ways to take control of the board, or at least reset the board back to 0, repetitively over and over. But now how can a Horobi deck win? Well, Horobi's Death Wail has no inherent ability to win the game better than other commanders. Just control the board. So you'll have to rely on black power cards to help you win. There are some fairly strong creatures, so a portion of my deck, I do have token generation. One of my favorite cards, being Grave Titan, has the Titan effect of entering the battlefield or attacking. His is generating 2 2/2 zombies. Every turn, he can kind of just spam out a couple guys here and there. Piper of the Swarm. This creature can slowly, turn by turn, produce a 1/1 black rat. But if you can accumulate enough rats, for 3 rats, you can steal one of your opponent's creatures. Ogre Slumlord. Since there are so many destroy effects, especially with Hirobi, creatures should be dying consistently throughout this battle. So Ogre Slumlord will take advantage of that, call upon black rats every time a non-token creature dies. Skurshdag High Priest. With a morbid effect, he can tap, along with 2 other untapped creatures, and produce you a giant 5/5 flying demon. Not all tokens have to be small. You can produce some bigger threats. While not a token producing card, Thieving Amalgam can give you extra bodies on the board in the form of Manifest. If they happen to get rid of Thieving Amalgam while killing your manifested creatures, you will drain some of their life as well. For the token generation cards, this is where Corrosive Mentor starts to shine. Because even though all your tokens are fairly small, your opponent won't want to stop them because it is going to wither away their army if they stop any of your smaller guys. So I highly suggest Corrosive Mentor in any deck that has a fair bit of token generation. So going wide is one option for taking the board control back into your favor. Another one could be building up tall creatures, taking advantage of the prolonged game, the massive death that's happened on board. Mortivore will get stronger for every creature in all graveyards. So if it's been a long game already, you've controlled the board greatly, then this guy will just be so large, somebody will have to stop him. Unfortunately, he doesn't have trample or some way of getting around your opponent's creature, but you can use Predator Flagship to give him flying to be a little more elusive, and he does have Regenerate to hopefully persist on the board. And then there's Nightmare. In a long game, mono black deck, you should have tons of swamps. This should be one beefy horse that has natural flying that can get around your opponent's creatures to hopefully chip down their health and give you the game. Besides attacking to win, black should have some ability to drain your opponent's life. Bloodseeker, your opponents will want to re-establish presence on the board. So if you get your Bloodseeker out after a good field wipe, you can just drain your opponent's life. So my last category is utility filler category. So it's things that the theme of my deck don't do well, and I want to try to make the deck a little more balanced, or if the colors I'm using are capable of doing more than I have shown, I'll put a few cards in to really demonstrate the power of that color. So for mono black, I have no discarding effect yet, so I may put discarding cards into the deck. So a Mimic Vat is a way to use any creature that has been on the board and died. You can create a copy of it every turn. It'll have haste, and it will have to end up being exiled at the end of the turn. You can even take your opponent's creatures, allowing you access to abilities you didn't have before that could swing the game in your favor. With all the destruction effects that are hopefully occurring, Sangromancer will be able to keep your life up. Since you are paying a life quite a bit to draw cards, this will allow you to stay in balance and survive longer. One kind of effect you'll see a lot in black is a discarding effect, which I don't have any yet, so I did add one Cabal Interrogator to the deck. I prefer this card because for 2 mana, he can make your opponent discard a card of their choosing, or if you have extra mana to spend, you can see more cards in your opponent's hand and get rid of the ones that are more powerful. Another weakness to Horobi is that we need to be able to target the creatures. So if your opponents have Hexproof or Shroud, then there's no way for Horobi to actually kill the creature with the effect. So we can use Glaring Spotlight, a simple 1-drop artifact that will remove Hexproof from your opponent's creatures, and possibly in clutch moments, give all your creatures Hexproof and unblockable to finish the game. And then we have a filler category. So a budget deck will have a lot of filler cards. Cards that have decent abilities, but maybe are not the strongest they could be. So for example, I run Vampire Nighthawk, a 3/2/3 Death Touch Flying Lifelink keywords. Overall, it doesn't really do much for the deck. It's just a fairly solid creature. So this is just a filler card though. It probably won't win me games. It just kind of lightly does stuff in the deck. The other section of filler is fun. So I love stealing cards from my opponents and playing them. I always have a great time. So I added Gonti, Lord of Luxury, to the deck. When he enters the battlefield, I can look at the top 4 cards of an opponent's deck, take one of them, return the rest to the bottom of the library, and I can cast that card at some point in the future. So it really adds a more fun element to my decks when I have this unpredictable randomness of cards that I might be able to get from my opponents. Since this is a monocolored deck and mana correction isn't a problem, you can run a fair bit of special lands, non-basic lands that will give you possibly an edge in battle. I run Arcane Lighthouse. Again, it will allow for Hirobi to target your opponent's creatures, since this will remove Hexproof and Shroud. While Horobi's on the board, we can use Tower of Magistrate to target a creature, give it protection from artifacts, but with Horobi, killing the creature instead. And it produces a colorless mana. Rogue's Passage can be used as a bit of an expensive targeting mechanism in the deck, and at the same time it can allow for certain creatures of yours to attack without worry, such as Grave Titan, King Makar the Gold Cursed, and Neferox, Overlord of Grixis. Temple of the False God. On your 5th land and higher, it produces 2 colorless mana. Excellent little ramp. Desert of the Glorified, Barren Moor, and Polluted Mire. These are all fine lands to cycle. Since we do produce some colorless mana in the deck, I put Seagate Wreckage in order to draw a card if my hand does become empty. And Witch's Cottage. It has a chance to come in untapped while returning a creature from your grave to the top of your library, while the rest of the deck is filled with swamps.